We are live. Live. All right, let me just verify a few things here. All right, cool. So I've got the chat open as well as Twitter. If you want to get in touch or have questions, throw up on Twitter, or the YouTube chat thing here is perfectly fine. So what we're going to do today is, it came up recently that I give a little presentation about like what is Polymer and what are web components, and in that I show this goofy example, which is this, and I talk through an awesome explosion tag. And then someone at the last talk asked if it's a real element, and I said no. So we're going to make it a real element now. So you can see the spec, if you will, for the thing we're going to build today as a tag that goes up on webcomponents.org is awesome explosion. It's going to have support for different sizes, and it's going to have support for different colors. So this is kind of, seeing how these are built, talking through what they are, give other people a chance to ask questions, but also it's going to make a goofy element at the end, so it should be all good. So we're not going to save that one. You can go to webcomponents.org, and you can see, the element, well, where we're going to have an element, right? We're going to go and build one out. We're going to be using Polymer to do this. I'm going to be doing it in, says Polymer 2 is out. I still write elements in Polymer 1 just because I think it's a lot more readable for a new audience. And so I make a lot of elements under this branding of LRN. It's an initiative at Penn State's College of Arts and Architecture to build out design elements for instruction. And so this is a silly example, one just to talk through what one of these is in a silly way, but also so that we can test out sound, because I want to start to put sound to certain operations. We're trying to make this little like gamified dashboard thing. So we're going to try out HTML5 sound, which is why I have this article open. So before I get started with anything, we're going to make a repo for this on GitHub so people can check it out. And it's going to be called Awesome Explosion. And then we're going to have a description for it. An amazing, awesome explosion, if I can type, as a single tag. This is a silly example element. Okay, and then we're going to create the repository. So now I've got this up on GitHub. I'm going to copy this address. We're going to go into terminal here. Although before we go into terminal, I want to point out a gist that we have. So on my gist, if you go to gist.github.com/btopro, you can see this thing says lesson plan. This will actually step you through a lesson plan that we did recently, point you to some relevant resources. Ignore the times, that was just like for when we first ran it, but basically I have already done these steps, we can assume. So I already have an IDE, I've got Bower installed, I've got Polymer installed, and Node, which is fun to get going. But so I've got all those installed already, and we'll assume that. If you want to play along at home, or you have questions about how to do that, just go ahead and you can kind of follow through these directions. So we're going to assume I already ran those commands for the purposes of this. I already have a directory that I like to put all my elements in called LRN Web Components. So in there, I'm going to do a git clone, and then I'm going to clone that awesome explosion repo, which at the moment is nothing. You appear to have cloned an empty repo. So now I can go and cd into awesome explosion, and in there I'm going to do Polymer init. Now, honestly, for when we make elements in LRN, we don't do this. We have our own little tooling thing that effectively does the same thing. It just makes us a boilerplate. But first, I'm going to make it this way just so you can see what that step would be. So if I were to make this element, I put in a name, it's going to default to the name of the folder. and then I can put in a description for it. It's going to go to a whole bunch of dependencies, and then let's see what that looks like. Again, I'm not going to use this one specifically, but if we go up to Awesome Explosion, we can see that's created awesomeexplosion.html, which is effectively what a component looks like. Bower components, this is where all the things that you depend upon to make an element would be. A demo space, a polymer.json that can be read off, and like a very basic like test boilerplate. So to see what the boilerplate gets you, let's open this in, I use Sublime Text. So there you go, open this in Sublime, and what the boilerplate would get you is this. So you get this Awesome Explosion boilerplate. We can see that it just says hello prop 1. And then this is Polymer 2 syntax as far as what the properties are of this. Now, I said I'm not going to do it this way because we have some tooling that puts things in place automatically for us. Plus, we still build things in 1, but I wanted you to see what a 2 element looks like to kind of express that it's really not that different from a 1. There's nicer syntax. There's a lot more things for hardcore developers and programmers and JavaScript people that like the way that class structure is done. Polymer 3 is going to change this as well, but it's still very much in development, so I'm not going to even talk about it. But so I'm going to clear out this repo though, because we have a little bit of our own tooling that's wrapped on top. So I'm going to go back to LRN in this case, and there's a package in our LRN web components called LRN Developer. And if you run through LRN Developer, you get your own little mini tooling thing that basically just puts things in place. So I'm going to build a new component using this. And again, much like the other one's going to ask me what that's called. So in this case, it's going to be Awesome Explosion. Okay, and put down Awesome Explosion. It's going to go do similar things, but then it's actually going to pull from one of our boilerplates that we use in our project, which also just kind of helps streamline things just that little bit more, so that we can get it up on webcomponents.org even faster. So, for example, if we go to terminal, you'll see this is actually created a Git repo, attached it to that, and then pushed up the initial code. So now, if I go back to a Git repo, I should have this boilerplate. Yeah, so that you see what the initial boilerplate was that we started with. Some other things our tooling does is it just formats the readme.md a little differently, like putting in this link to webcomponents.org published. It also puts in a license that we use everywhere, so we use Apache 2 on all of these, and gets a few dependencies by default that we typically use. So you can see in Bower, like we have these LRN sys behaviors. So these are all things we can remove after the fact, but just to suggest what it is that did. Another awesome thing with Polymer in the tooling is you can have it generate these little mini sites for documentation and testing purposes. So the way you do that, so it's a little less magic, is you do Polymer serve, and then in this case I did -- open, which will automatically open the window to it. I did this in the wrong directory though. So I need to go into Awesome Explosion. Now I can do Polymer serve open. There we go. And so what this is doing is it's giving you the documentation and an example of what you're doing, right? So to start with a boilerplate, it's just right there. So I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. But so what were the criteria of our Awesome Explosion? So we need to add some properties to it. So the first property that we had is Untitled, and again, to cover this as well, you see this is Polymer 1 syntax, and so it's personal preference. These elements play nice together. You can run things in hybrid mode, so you can use 2 and 1, and Google has said they will run hybrid mode for 3, 2, and 1. So nothing really to worry about there. I just think it's cleaner. There's less syntax in the way. It does do a lot more hand-holding as far as what it's doing under the hood, but we found this a lot easier to ramp up junior devs as a result. So Awesome Explosion. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to map out what my properties are for an Awesome Explosion. The first one was size. And so size, we're going to have, it's going to be a string value, and we should give it a default size. And so default is going to be medium. Now, it's also a good idea to document this, and so this is called doc blocking. But so block out what it is that we're documenting in this little way here, and you'll see it show up in a second as to why I do this. So this is the size of the element. Possible values are. All right, so this is a good way of kind of documenting to other people in the team what it is. And obviously it wouldn't be smaller, it'd be like small, medium, large, and I believe in our silly example we had to get epic even, so we better put epic in there. So I'm going to save, and actually let's put size here for the moment. We'll explain that in a second. And if I refresh the mini site, you'll see it's read off my element and it turns it into documentation. So good documentation under the hood leads to good high quality documentation in this easy to review site. And then if I hit demo, we'll see, whoopee, we have the word medium. So right now, if someone were to put awesome explosion somewhere, you're gonna get that. Whoop-dee stinking do. So let's start to actually make this an explosion, right, and mess with it a little bit. So in our awesome explosion, right, we probably are going to need some assets, right, because we're going to need to actually have an awesome explosion to draw from. I'm not doing any crazy SVG awesome explosion. So I've got two things here. I've got this awesome explosion GIF that I already pulled down from Jiffy. This has been shared like several million times, so I don't really have to worry about it being open domain licensing. It's already out there in the public everywhere for this example. And so we're going to call this explode. Okay, so there's our explode.gif. And then you'll see, it's updated my IDE. I have assets there. And so what I would do forever, right, if I wanted to put this on a page, this is part of my talk, is I do img src equals, and then we would do assets / explode.gif. And then let's just close that. So for the longest time in web development, that's how I would get this to be on a web page. Go here, you see documentation hasn't updated, but in my demo, I get my awesome explosion. Now, for those of you that have written HTML and JavaScript and CSS, that's all well and good. You know that to use the img tag, src, but communicating this to a less technical audience or people that's not really part of their day job is difficult. And I bet more people interface with HTML at wherever you work than you would really consider. So we work primarily with instructional designers and faculty members, but they work in HTML quite a bit. They're not really constructing it. They're having to kind of, mess with stuff to make it kind of look the right way. And it's always kind of look the right way. So there's always training in basics of HTML. So if we were to make this tag effectively encapsulate this so that someone could put down an awesome explosion when they want it, it lets them express things more semantically. It's kind of what we're going for here. So what this is, I glossed over it first, is this is a data bind. So this is what is known as a one-way data bind. And so effectively, if someone uses the property size in my awesome explosion tag, then it's going to print whatever that value is here. So I can go to my demo, and what I like to do is a lot of times with my demos is illustrate several of them. So let's put down a few more so we can see this. So we'll leave that one as default, and we'll say default. This one we're going to say is small, and this one we're going to say is medium, just to see that it's the same as default. And then we're going to do our other two. So do large, and this one will be epic. And now for awesome explosion, to get that to show up the right way, because if I save right now, and I refresh, and I go to demo, I have all my elements, and they all just say medium everywhere. So what I need to do to use that size property is I need to actually put the property size equals whatever in here. So let's go to this one. I'm going to do size equals small. And we're going to copy that down to here, and down to here, and down to here. And now we're going to make it epic. And in this case, we're going to make it large. And in this case, we're going to make it medium. Now, medium was the default, but let's say you wanted to specifically say it was medium. So now this is implementing that property that I wrote. And so if I refresh, we're going to see medium. And because I've binded it to that field, you'll see the word small, medium, large, epic, right? But it hasn't influenced our GIF that's obnoxiously exploding. Oh, this is going to be wonderful. So if we go to awesome explosion, right, size is a word, and so that doesn't really help us influence this in any way. Traditionally, what you would do, right, is we'd probably go like width equals 100% or something like that, and height equals whatever. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to give this an ID. Now, a cool thing with web components, if you're familiar with making one big web page and has IDs, your IDs can't conflict. But basically, you're fragmenting the DOM into lots of little tiny DOMs. And so as long as the ID doesn't conflict within this current document you're looking at, it'll be fine. So let's give this an ID of image, right? Because that's what it is. Now, let's apply classes to that. And so we'll just say image, right? And we'll do width equals 400 px and height 400 px, just so we have a default, right? So this is kind of a more traditional how you go about doing this. So let's use that size attribute. Now there's a few ways you could do that. I could do something like this, and so I could say class equals, and then I do binding to the size. Now class is a special property because it's actually like an attribute in HTML, the spec itself, and so everything always has a class. And so whenever something already has data in it, you have to do this, which is effectively, you know, if you're familiar with other languages, this would be like your plus equals almost, where it's going to make sure that size gets added in there. So it's going to evaluate every time as opposed to do a direct one-to-one. So in this case, I could also put like image tag or something, right? And so it would actually bind the class there. So let's get rid of this part. Save, and let's see what our resultant is. So I've got awesome explosion. I've got awesome explosion size small. And now let's inspect and see what that actually gave us. So we have awesome size small, but then we actually see class and it puts small. And now this is another pretty awesome aspect of web components and Polymer is scoping. So you see this style hyphen scope. Everything is going to be scoped just to that HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that I put in place there. So if I can style this to look perfect in a vacuum, it's going to look perfect everywhere is the idea. That's what Shadow DOM nets you. Now, if you're not using Shadow DOM, and honestly, we don't use Shadow DOM in our projects, and you're going, what the heck is a Shadow DOM? It effectively is a way that the browser can kind of containerize the thing you put in place. So we use something called Shady DOM, which is kind of like faking what Shadow DOM does. Why we do that is we place these in a larger system, and that way we can actually intentionally let CSS and JavaScript bleed through. We're going to need to continue to do that for a bit until we actually have fully implemented these things. So let's rig that up, right? Because right now it's small, but it didn't actually do anything, right? So let's go back to Sublime. And so I mentioned there's two ways we can accomplish this. So let's do the first way. So first way is this, right? Someone puts in a class of whatever they did, and then I could do small. We could say width 100 px and height 100 px. And to be perfectly honest, I hate pixels, so let's do 5 EMs and 5 EMs. If you're not familiar, an EM is effectively the equivalent of 16 pixels. So a lot of times we'll do math off of EM. I just like doing it off of EMs better personally. But so let's do small, medium, rip. Okay, and then we can quickly make a medium. And we're going to say, yes, while medium is the default, this image technically had a height and width. We can drop that now because we're going to have all of these values, you would say, right? But in this example, let's say the user put in the wrong word. So they put in large and epic, but I actually ended up typing into the usage of the tag like X large or something, right? Well, we don't have support for X large, so that's where our fallback to what the height and width is, so that it at least does something, right? It's wrong, but it's at least something. So let's make medium in this case. We'll make medium 10. We'll just up these by 5 each time at the moment. Large is 1515, and then we're going all the way. Ludicrous speed here. So I said these would be whatever medium was, so let's default these to whatever medium was, which is 10 EMs. In the case of 10 EMs, it's 160 pixels, so I'm immediately going to see that these are probably not as epic as I want them to be, but okay. So we get our default. So that's our default medium now. And now with small, medium, large, are all the exact same, aren't they? Well, if we inspect the DOM here, we can see that that's because the, hashtag image, in this case, to target an ID. IDs are more aggressive of a selector than just a class in this case, see, so the .epic. So to get this to override that, I need to do this. So this would be a small image and a large image and an epic image. Save. All right, let's try that again. Demo. Normal. Oh, I see a smaller one. Small, medium, large, and epic. Now, epic isn't quite epic enough. The point of the epic tag was to be absurd. So knowing that, let's make epic like 45. Let's make large 20. Let's make medium 15. And then let's add a tiny. So this would be, you add, someone on the design team says, hey, we want support for another size. This is how easy that just became, right? And I add this in, and that could be like a hidden thing. Maybe you don't really want people to use tiny. You don't like tell everyone that. So if I don't put that down in here, then they wouldn't know. But now I could add tiny here so that I can do that one. And then I go back to my documentation, and instead of small, we're going to paste that again. We're going to do tiny. And then let's take out our default, because we don't really want people to use the default in this case. They can use it. Put this in place, see our updated documentation. I hit demo, and now we've got tiny, small, medium, large, and ridiculous. Okay, good. So now, just using this simple tag, we could do an epic explosion. Now I mentioned there's two ways to accomplish this. So this is the one way. I use this method occasionally. Let's take this out though, because there's another way that I like better, much better. And that's using the actual property itself. So for starters, let's go down to size, and we're gonna add two things that this can do. So we're gonna do notify true, and that's gonna say that when this changes, tell everything else it has changed. Now that would have to be in place if I were to inspect the DOM and modify, that making a tiny, a small, or a large, an epic, or what have you, so that the class would get kind of rebinded to what that is in the template. Another one I can do is reflect to attribute, do true on that. And what that does is that the size will actually be printed into the DOM. You'll be able to see small, medium, large, which actually, if I look at this, yes, it says it there, but I don't believe it'll be on here. Oh, no, it does actually have it on there. Okay, so in that case, it is there. So let's change that. And so now we're going to go with a property and make it, target differently, right? I'm not going to put it in the class, but I still want it to be able to target it correctly. So what I've been liking, and this is, again, it's kind of the way you want to accomplish something, but I've been enjoying doing this. So we could say the .host is effectively, hey, this is the element itself. And then you can do selectors on there that relates your properties. So in this case, I could say size equals tiny. And so this is, if it is tiny, then we need to take the image and apply this. And so it's a little, it's a little bit different methodology, but I'm kind of enjoying it more, to be perfectly honest. Whereas the other one could actually, someone could throw in whatever class they want and kind of screw it up. This won't have any of that support with it. I think it's a lot cleaner to read. Again, it's preference, but so let's do medium. Okay. And now, again, this is just for readability's sake. I enjoy having host-based selectors above everything else. Okay, so this should accomplish the exact same thing as the previous method. It's just a little more readable. So let's refresh, and now we've got our tiny explosion, small, medium, and large and epic. And now maybe we had some JavaScript, and that actually changed our large explosion into an epic one. Now we can do that just by reaching out and updating the DOM. So I could say small, and now it'll behave like a small one. You could have done that with the class one as well. I just think it's cleaner this way. It's going to be more performant as well, because we're not actually binding to the size value in this case. So the next one's a little more tricky. It was color. And so what we're going to do, I'm just going to copy this, paste it in there, and let's do red, blue, orange, yellow. And this won't be required. So the default value of this is nothing, because this will be just for shifting it if you want to. And then this is going to be color. So this is to change the color of the element. Now in the silly example that we are referring to, hey, look at that, my ID colors those. In the silly example we're referring to, we also said, okay, well, what if I don't want the default, image, right? I would have to do all this kind of crazy CSS transformation to colorize something. So in this case, we're going to follow similar methodology to these. And so we'll just copy one of these, paste it in there. And in this case, we'd say color. And let me pull, whoops, right thing, pull up those colors for reference. Red. If you're not familiar, I'm using Alfred to do that, so that's not a normal part of the browser of the OS. But so in this case, we'll just say color red for the moment, because I'm going to have to look up how to achieve that. Paste and get these in place. Paste. Paste. Right, and this is kind of allowing us to have this constrained flexibility to things. And now, again, with the image, we should pick a default one, although actually in this case we're not going to, because if we don't have a color, it shouldn't colorize it. Color shift and element, I'm typing in another page here. To change an element, it's like CSS, filter, color, filter, change color. Looking. So you should be able to do filter to modify an image. So let's put this in. I'm going to copy this from Stack Overflow, because that's how anyone gets anything done, obviously. And we're just going to put that in and see what it does with red. Now, obviously, that's not going to make it red, but let's do tiny and then color equals red in this example. So I get my documentation updated. It's kind of nice. It says color, size. I guess it's sorting based on name. And oddly enough, that actually made it red. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it was supposed to, based on the article that I just read. But it's pretty cool that it actually made it red immediately. So you can see again, this is the advantage of this type of a semantic approach, right? I'm not going to be able to really effectively communicate to people because heck, I didn't even know how to do it. To saturate and do a hue rotation appropriately. Let's take out the sepia filter because that would have messed with things. Ooh, see what we get when we don't have sepia in there. So you can do all kind of crazy CSS color distortions. Let's do, I'm looking at another website here. Let me actually pull this up. There's a website that says how to do these. So it's from a Stack Overflow, but I found this JS bin. And the JS bin has basically, if you apply these different color rotations, you can force it to do different colors. So let's just stick to these for the moment. So we wanted yellow, right? So that's a 350-degree rotation. And so let's do, so that actually is red. That's pretty awesome. Let's do yellow in this case. So we're going to do 350-degree rotation. And orange, let's be like a 320. 320, and blue, we're going to do like a 170. Okay, and then I don't know why red was 30, because that's not it's not actually what's in there. So let's see what this ends up doing. It claims red is like 290, but well, let's set that at 290. Maybe that'll tell us what is actually going on here. Okay, so let's go back to our element then. And we're gonna, whoops, make sure I save that page because it doesn't do auto reloading. Save, demo. All right, so we actually got purple out of that. And so some of this is gonna be a little bit of trial and error. It's kind of, part of the process. Purple. So now we can support purple, yay. So let's set that to 30. And now let's see what those other colors are effectively through this methodology. So let's go and do in our demo site, let's color red. And then we're going to say purple and blue and yellow. And what was another one? Purple, orange. Okay, so let's save and see what these actually come up as, because I don't think they're going to be right. Red is red, nice. Purple is purple, because I cheated. Blue is actually, it's sort of blue. It's like a green. Yellow is not correct. And orange is not correct. It's like a fuchsia, so let's just make it fuchsia. I don't really want to mess with the color wheel that much for these silly examples. So blue is pretty close though. So let's hue rotate these. What was blue is 170. Let's see if we make it like 210. What happens to blue? Another cheat for this, if you just type demo after the name of this thing, you don't have to keep refreshing that. Hey, we got blue. So it seems like everything's kind of off by 30 almost. So let's take yellow in this case, and oh geez, let's go. I don't think it would let me go over 360 degrees, but we can certainly try. Let's see what happens with that one. Some in there for sure. Go down. No, we're getting into fuchsia. So we're just going to name that fuchsia. Is that, I think, how you spell fuchsia? I don't know how you spell fuchsia, to be perfectly honest. All right, well, we're gonna leave it as it is. This is actually a silly example. I don't really care that much, to be perfectly honest. So get the idea that you could color shift these things. That is a ugly yellow now, but that these do different colors. So I could also name these like color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4. To give people some variation on what it actually is doing to the explosion. So we could do that as well, but it would be a little less effective, right, if it just said like color 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or what have you. So let's keep it at that, even though it's not perfect. Another thing we could do is we could actually kind of tokenize this if we wanted to. So like right now this is pointing forever to assetsexplode.gif. But let's see, a lot of times we'll make a static mockup. And then write is HTML, and then we'll kind of work backwards from there. So let's do an additional one, which would be image, right? Because someone implementing this, right? Yes, I know it's an SRC, but someone implementing this would be an awesome explosion. Size is medium, color is blue, image is, right? They could say that as a sentence a lot more easily. So let's do image, allow advanced users to swap out our explosion image, right? So that's what this would do, right? This is getting a little more developer centric. We're going to do data bind and say, hey, this is where our image is going to go. And now our default value, we make what we want it to be otherwise. We're going to reflect attribute. We're going to notify in this case, save. And now let's make it go to our little doc site. Okay, so there's image, say, hey, this is just for advanced users. And now we have a broken image because SRC already lives on there. So this is the previously expressed issue. So what you need to do here, you need to do this, which says, hey, evaluate this, and kind of stitch it together. Or perhaps that is not what the actual issue is. It's saying demo assets explode.gif is not found. Really? because it needs to be like this, I believe is the issue here. Let's see. There we go. Now, this is relative to it being placed in the demo site as opposed to relative to the image itself. I believe if we do absolute, let's see what happens then. It probably screws up again. Oh, no, it corrected it. So let's see what path it's claiming. Goes to assets explode.gif. So obviously have to mess with some things a little bit there versus if I just had it in here, it was working previously, right, without all of this path manipulation stuff. So important to note, you know, when pointing to things relative to where they are, or you have a path that just, you know, shows up, you're going to have to worry about some relative pathing types of things like that, I guess. So let's just leave that, you know, in this mode. We don't want people to be able to hijack that. So now we made awesome explosion, and it's documented, and I can get it up on webcomponents.org, but I'm not going to yet because part of why I wanted to do this is to mess around with audio. And now audio on the web has gotten way easier than it was several years ago, but you know, you should really not abuse it. So I found the Stack Overflow that's playing audio with JavaScript, and it's kind of amazing how simplistic it is now. I remember having to jump through all kind of hoops to make an audio file play. But effectively now this is all you have to do because it's, you know, just baked into the browser. As long as you're not worried about like really old versions of IE, which I'm not. So again, kind of cheating on getting things ahead of time. I got this Creative Commons License 0 sound effect from freesound.org. It's a pretty cool site. Just wanted to mention it. So this sound should sound like, right? It should sound like fireworks. That's the whole point. So now let's see if we can hook this up to play when things get going. So there is kind of this built-in ready state, if you will, if you're familiar with jQuery. It has one as well. And so where you, instead of document.ready, you do a type of, you know, effectively, is this thing that they're working with ready? So because it's this little mini DOM, if you will. So in this case, when we're ready to go, let's play an audio file. And that's going to be really annoying. And so we'll immediately want to fix it. But we want to just prove that we can get this to work first. And so our audio file is going to be located in assets slash, it's not audio file, it's this crazy file name. Copy it there. Okay, save. Play fireworks blowing up. All right, so let's save, go into, close out Polymer there, go back to our awesome explosion. And we've got 10 errors. That's pretty awesome. Failed to load source because no supported source was found. So again, path was not correct, it would appear. So if we go to assets slash that path dot mp3, is it actually there? It is actually there. But what was our path that it was complaining about? Let's say demo. So you see it did try to run, but again, it's that it thinks it's in the demo directory. So let's do absolute for both of these, I believe, at the moment. Let's see what happens there. Oh boy. Okay, so that was the point, right? was to invoke 10 explosions that go off at the same time. So all right, so our audio works, but immediately, and our ready state works, so that's cool, but obviously we don't want to play that. So let's put our image tag back, actually, you know, to be perfectly honest. Let's put image back, and let's get that. Let's see if we can't do this path, because I'd like to have a variable sound and image if I could. This allows you to swap out the image, and then we'll do one for sound too, right? So sound. This allows you to swap out the sound. Okay. And then in this case, the sound is going to actually point to this crazy thing here. And we'll show what we can do with that in a second. So put sound in place there. Now, if you want to use these values, you can throughout your little JavaScript app here, building its Polymer app. So I can do this dot sound. And so that's going to have access to these properties that I'm pointing to right here. So if I wanted to access the image, I could do this dot image and have access to it. There's also some kind of jQuery selector shortcuts, if you will, associated with IDs. So when Polymer boots up, it's going to find all the IDs in your document. So in this case, I could do, if I wanted to find that, I could do this dot $.image, and that's effectively giving me the tag, the image. So if I wanted to set like change class list, new class list dot add new class or something like that, I could do that. So let's make this run again and make sure that it actually works with those two things. Okay, good. So it found it, and it's funny, you can hear car alarms going off. Glad I have headphones on, or else that would be a problem. So obviously we don't want to do that on ready state, right? This tag would never get used. And even though it's a joke, it would be nice if it showed up at least somewhere. So let's change this to play the sound effect. So let's say that we have the ability to just play the sound effect arbitrarily. So let's call this function play sound. And then whenever play sound would get run, right, play sound is going to create a new audio source within the document, and then it's going to blow up, right? So let's now we would want to reuse this somehow, right? So let's add a listener, like an event listener, so that when something happens is when we actually respond to this. So you can do this via more traditional event listeners, where you actually write out the full JavaScript of the event listener, put it in the ready state, so then it's listening. I kind of just like, this is cleaner in my opinion to do it this way. So what we could do is we could just say tap, and we do one for hover, and then we'll obviously want to turn that one off, but we'll just show each of them working. So then we'll do play sound, and then so when someone taps on this and when they hover over it, it's going to play a sound, like we hope. So let's go back to here. Demo. Okay, so it didn't play to start. Yay! Oh! Okay, so hover didn't work because hover is like a composite, I think is what it is. It's like on mouse over, I believe. Here I have a couple of them that I kind of use over and over again. There we go. So mouse down, mouse over, mouse out. View. So now tap works. Tap would be, tap is different from click in that if you're on a phone and you just tap on something, it's going to play immediately. If it's a click, it'll wait for you to like depress and then press up, and then it will play the thing. Because of how obnoxious this is, I might actually want to use a click, or tap is similar to mouse down. It's not exactly the same, but so instead of hover, let's do mouse over as our event. And so when we mouse over a tag, we're going to play our sound. And now I'm guessing a little bit here, but I'm pretty sure I can stop this as well. So let's see if we can't stop this with the correct event. So let's put in here kind of, it's not play sound, it's make sound, right? And now this is going to be op, like our operation. And so now we've got our audio file. We do if op equals play. Here, do that. And I think what's actually going to happen is we're going to get multiple. It's not really going to stop it. But otherwise, we're going to do audio.stop. Okay. So we could most likely do this through another method, but let's try this at first. So then we've got make stop as our function. We can go back up. Let's take out these listeners, or well, take out this listener and these ones. And so now we'll do mouse out. Let's say when you move off of it, we don't want to do that anymore. So we have make sound, and in this case,
off, right, or stop. We'll see if you can actually do it this way. I don't believe I've tried it this way before. Play. Okay, so let's see what happens here. I might get some warnings. I don't know that you can affect it that way. No, so it's complaining, yeah, because it's looking for the whole thing. So in this case, instead of it being driven that way, let's do play sound versus stop sound. And so in this little shorthand, it's actually looking for the whole thing. Okay, play sound, and let's do stop sound. All right, and we're going to come down here. We're going to do that. Paste this function. And do stop the sound effect. Also, we could probably do window.audio just to make sure that we're actually targeting the same one. I don't want to play multiple times, so this could be a good way to force that. But let's see what happens. So then here we do if type of window.audio equals type of undefined, which is effectively saying if this hasn't been created yet, then let's do window.audio equals new audio. So this should give us a global singular audio, so that way we're not having like a million car alarms go off when it would load up. So now we can get rid of this, and now we should be able to instead do window.audio in this case, and this should be start sound, or sorry, play sound. We don't have operations on here. Let's get rid of those. All right, play sound. Yay. So now if someone taps on it or they mouse over, it should play, and if they mouse out, it should stop. And it should be global. Let's see if this actually works. I'm taking a little bit of guesses here. Another cool thing with the documentation, you can also see it's got the methods listed here now for play sound, stop sound, as well as adding in our defaults and things to the other parts of the docs. So stop is not a function. But you'll notice while this is playing once, it's not starting multiple times. So we're not going to get drowned out and want to die. So that part did work. So we need to figure out how to stop. Let's see if it's in here. Stop. It claims it's stop. Play audio. Stop. Prop current time 0. Oh, maybe it's pause. Maybe it's stop pause. There we go. So dot pause, and there's also about putting it back to 0. Now, if I really wanted to make it restart again, I could do that. Where was the 0 in there? There was play audio, current time, there we go. So I could set current time on it to 0. Let's see if that actually works. So let's take this, and we're going to go down here, and in our stop, it's not going to be stop, it's going to be pause, right? And then we're going to do window.audio. I don't think I actually need that. Let's just do .current time equals 0 and see what that does. Save. Okay. Some explosion. Load. Hey, it worked. So now let's hover. Sweet. So now our explosion, if you were to hover on it, it's going to blow up. Now why, if you notice, if I move my mouse here, it actually starts there. Does anyone think of what that is? You can see in the box model, this actually is taking up the full frame, even though the image is only that big. So we could mess with, this isn't actually display block in this case. It might be like inline block. Right, so if I do inline block, these would sit next to each other, but also it's not going to take up the full width. So now, move over here, right? It's not triggering it. It's only when I'm actually on the explosion. So let's go in here. How will we fix that? Well, that's on the host itself. So this is display block by default. Well, let's change it to inline block. And so now, if it's inline block, I should be able to start putting some of these demo things together. So let's take a medium and let's put it next to a small and a tiny. Let's change this a bunch of awesome explosions. Take out the word demo. And so maybe instead of people scrolling through all of this in the little docs here, we just put them all together and see what happens now. So we can do tiny, small, medium, and then let's delete this, and we'll take large and put it next to epic. Those are less frequently used in this case, so large / epic, awesome explosion. Let's take off the S there, tags. All right, tags. Okay, so cool. So let's save. Let's see what happens. So go back to demo, and now I've got all these together. Make a nice collage. And they only fire when I actually scroll over them. Now that's kind of annoying, to be perfectly honest. Ooh, look what happened there. That's an interesting effect. I guess that's when I highlight them. So you can see what the real color is that it's applying. It's kind of cool with that filter. So let's take all of these, put them together, because they're all just going to stack. It's kind of cool. And then take that off. Let's go into awesome explosion one more time. And so through, we've got our properties. We know how to use this. Instead of, I know what I'm going to change. Instead of current time equaling 0, let's try and bind that to something. And so let's do a Boolean for that. And so this Boolean we're going to make is allow for resetting the sound effect. Okay, so we're going to say reset sound. And reset sound is going to be type Boolean. And the value is going to be false. So we don't want to reset the sound by default, for example. And then we're going to do, we'll do a reflect. I like reflecting the attribute. In the case of these, I don't really know any notify. Like that's probably going to just happen anyway. So let's take those off and see what the difference will be. So now reset sound, the way we could use this down in our function is, okay, so we go if this dot reset sound. Right, so if it's true, then we're going to actually set the current time of our global audio back to nothingness. Yay, nothingness. So let's now go into our demo here, and so it's reset audio is defaulted to false. So how about only the first tag we're going to implement this? Now this is a silliness between HTML and JavaScript. In JavaScript I have to write that as reset sound, camel case, so the big S. And if I'm using an HTML I have to write it like that. Another kind of silliness is that is the same as effectively saying like true or 1 or whatever. But so we just do reset sound. So now we will reset the sound anytime we touch the epic explosion or the tiny explosion, but not the other ones. So let's see what happens now. Again, it's a global explosion. And so if I go into this middle one, right, it's still stopped, but it should continue. That's continuation. This one, when I mouse off of it, should reset the position to 0. See? So you end up getting the exact same sound every time with that one. You can see, again, it's very readable to know what the differences are between these. Another cool thing we could do is we could actually, maybe I want the explosion to have kind of like a player, right? So that it actually, we could, trigger these operations in another way. Now I did this recently on another project. So the demo site for, here it is, our progress thing. You can use, you'll see template tags around. If you use isBind, I can't hear the explosion. Oh, well, I think you're lying, Michael Potter. on chat window, but let me see if the explosion works. Because I hear it and it's stinking loud. So let's say we wanted a button to be able to trigger that. So if we do this DOM bind, then we can start to tie things up to buttons. And so we'll just just copy a bunch of this. Is why I love this plugin I have. Query selector for that, and then I don't know, event listener for clicking on stuff. Cool. Okay, so let's go back here to our demo. We could actually make our demo like, hey, this is the way it would function if you actually wired it up to other elements, because the whole point of these elements is not just to use them in a vacuum. So let's put these in, but then at the top we're going to put an ID on this one. We're going to say this is explode. Okay, and then we're going to put in here, I'm going to do, whoops, sorry, I need script for that. Duh. So we're going to say script, okay, and then we're going to say, hey, in the document, we're going to go look for, look for button. In this case, button, we're going to actually write a button. Button is start sound. And then we do button ID equals button in this case. Now I hear, oh good, I'm glad that they played earlier. Sorry, I'm catching up on the chat from before. So they are there, it's just I had to like stream them, pipe them through a different channel. So let's do, we got RT there, let's add event listener. I'm stealing stuff. So let's do button, right? So we select our button, and then we add an event listener to our button, in this case, clicking. Now, let's also do a selector for that EX. And so do REX, query selector EX, and now I can access the functions down inside of that function. So let's do, let's get, actually, you know, we'll leave that there for one example in a second here. So now I could do EX dot, and I could effectively access any functions that are down inside of that explosion tag. So in this case, we'll do play sound when you click it. And so if you click it, we'll do play sound. And we'll get rid of this console log, and let's make this sound playing. So there's a toast for it. Cool. All right, now I need to go and get other elements. It's funny, this whole thing and actually show pulling in other elements. So I'm going to go to my awesome explosion. We're going to do, and I just know what the names of these are at this point, but our install save polymer elements. In this case, we're going to get paper toast. Paper toast lets you do a little pop-up. And then let's also get paper button while we're at it. Why not? Okay. Yep, pick option 2. All right, so now those are in scope. To use them, let's throw them into our demo, because they're not actually going to be on our real element. This is a really simple element. Do paper button, and then paper button. Okay, and then we also want paper toast / paper toast. Cool. So then we've got these available, and so using these HTML imports, now I have access to these tags and I can use them. So then in the case of this toast one, it's, you know, again, stealing from something I made previously. Where is the toast? There it is. Let's just take these 2 tags. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to make this say button. We're going to say play. And space this out so the little doc site's easier to read. Space that down. Okay, put those together. All right, now I should have a button that says play. I should have a toast that doesn't do anything, hopefully. All right, let's see what happens now on our demo site. So again, documentation hasn't changed because this is just influencing the demo itself. You can see now I have a play button, and now I can trigger that event that's inside of it. Now if I want it to stop, I have to actually mouse off of it, right? So I could actually add a button for that as well if I wanted to, very easily. So let's just copy this whole block and query selector, do button 2, button 2, button 2, and in this case it's stop sound. Instead of play, sound stopped in this case. All right, so now button 2, let's make another button, button 2. Let's actually, whoops, let's throw these in a div just to offset them a little bit. Yep. Okay, save. All right, so now my play and pause are at the top. And maybe let's say play because I'm an idiot. Let's do stop. Okay, demo. And now I better, well, let me fix my audio situation here for where the it's like either I have things pipe out through the speakers or I don't. So let's add something a little more sophisticated here. So let's do events. So in this case, these have been properties. And as our good friend Michael Potter says, you need to make sure properties go down and events always bubble up. And so what do we do to like, what does that look like? So in the case of these tags, this is effectively properties going down, right? So I'm clicking tiny and something's happening. Now I am cheating a little bit and it gets a little weird, right? I haven't actually set a property and it's playing sound. So let's make it so that you can actually just make these play, right? So we're gonna do two things. We're gonna do some event management here as far as stopping and starting sound. And this doesn't actually make these private, but generally speaking, if you put an underscore or a low dash in front of the function, people like know not to, reference it or whatever. And also, I think in your doc site, in your doc site it goes away. So if you put a low dash on it, it can actually then say show private API, hide those, so people know not to use them. Now, why would I do that? Well, for managing, state management, knowing where I am in this, if this were to get more sophisticated, it's important that there's something property-wise detecting that we're playing. There's nothing that's indicated we're playing. A function fired to just play. And so that's fine if you can hear the sound, but as everyone on the feed couldn't hear the sound a little bit ago, let's say that you were someone that had a disability and you can't hear, you don't know that that's happening, right? So we would need to inform something that this is going on. So let's do the same example, but in a little more sophisticated way. And so we're going to make a property that we bind to, and then people can update the property. So in this case, let's do state. And I like managing state. You could do just a Boolean, but I don't know. I kind of like managing state. So let's do state is for setting play versus pause versus stop. And this could also get us our reset to the original position type of a thing. In this case, state is going to be a string, and it's going to be stop is the default. We're going to reflect that to the attribute. Now, I also like Booleans, as I mentioned, and so I like stealing things instead of writing them again. Let's say instead of reset sound in this case, let's say we had stopped. And stopped is actually a state of this, but it's not a value that you can set, and we're not going to reflect it necessarily. let's make it a computed. And so computed values in Polymer is taking other things and generating what the value should be for stopped. So I like to do this with my states, is have a Boolean associated with those properties, but a single state that people could actually update, which makes that occur. As for the feed, I don't know which direction salmon go. I believe they go upriver, so I guess salmon would be events, as we'll see here in a minute. So stopped, we're going to say calculate stopped. And calculate stopped is going to take into it a state. So we're going to figure out if this is stopped. Now let's do it for the other ones while we're here. Allow for starting and allow for pausing. Okay, so then in this case, it's going to be paused. I like to do the camel case there. You don't need to. Do paused. I was literally just going to replace the S. That doesn't make any sense. Playing, calculate, playing, and playing. I should probably have the words. Stop, stopping. All right, so paused, stopped, playing. Okay, so now these are going to be calculated automatically whenever state changes. And so let's do calculate stopped. Let's come down and we're going to make a function for that. So instead of people accessing stop sound, they would access the state, and the state would manage the properties, and the properties would trigger this to play or stop or do whatever it's supposed to do. So then in this case, we've got function, and we've got new value, old value, and this will be important later. And so calculating stopped is what we're going to do is we're going to look at the value, and so you say if new value, okay, do this, and say calculate if it is stopped. Okay, so if the new value equals, I guess I could do triple if I really wanted to, stopped, and so that's not actually the state. State would be, yeah, so let's put this in our docs here. So possible values, play, pause, stop. Okay, so then we're going to start at stop. It's funny to say that. So if we have stop come across, then this dot stopped equals true. And we're going to set something else. So whenever this is set to true, let's fire an event in case anyone wants to respond to this. So let's do this dot fire awesome stop event. And then we could fire up from there whatever properties we want. So let's do value equals stopped for no real reason, right? Maybe that's what the message. Let's just do message. That actually makes more sense. Message sound stopped. Okay, so now we could apply this to everything else. Now we need to be able to disable it, and so this stopped is false, right? Okay, now we can copy this, paste, stopped playing, so then this would be play, and then play event, and then sound played in this case. Okay, now we can go calculate paused, and then this would be pause and paused, and this would be playing, and this would be paused, and this would be paused, and then sound paused. Now the other thing with these, right? So this is just managing. This is state management. It's firing events up. It's tweaking properties internally based on one property being updated. However, it's not actually stopping or playing anything, right? So let's do with stop sound. Well, when would we stop the sound? Well, whenever the event is fired for it. So now we do this dot stop sound, and it'll stop the sound from playing. We could also take out, well, I guess reset could be in there regardless, but we could just access it directly too. So let's do in this case, because stopping we want to actually enforce that it goes back to 0. So if I hit stop, like if it was a stop button, I could do this .window.audio.pause, and then that is the equivalent of the reset sound, right? Now, I could copy that here, or I could create another way to accomplish that. So I could do stop sound, and then if reset sound or this dot stopped, right? Because we're setting that property. So if it's stopped, then it actually means, hey, set this back to 0. If reset sound is not enabled, or the value coming in is, in this case, in the case of paused, it's not going to do that. So if this dot reset sound or this dot stopped, and let's do this. Let's do and not this dot paused. Okay, so if we're told to reset the sound or stop it, and we're not pausing, then you can reset this. So this would be someone invokes it, and we have that tag on it to hijack what it should do. So let's go back up here, and now we can do that this dot stop sound. We don't have to pass anything in because this dot stopped is going to be set to true right there, which then as it comes down, reset sound isn't true, but stopped is, and paused won't be, so it'll set this to 0. So now we can use the exact same function for stopped that we used for pause. Or should be able to. Okay, so now we can pause, and then play is the easy one. So now with play, let's just do this dot play sound. We don't have to do anything fancy with that. So now we've got calculating play. Calculating play is based on the state changing. And so now with these events, we can still do them this way if we really want to. So that you can mouse over and handle them that way, internal to itself, right? Internal, you don't really need to pass this stuff around too drastically. Or I could, have a function that figures out what it is I'm doing, and then it's going to change the properties to match. Could also be an important way to do that. So let's do, for a tap event, that would be like the same as play state, right? And so pause state, right? You could get into functions with that. I'm not actually going to mess with that. But if you really wanted to enforce and maintain your data model, that things are playing only when they should be and things are paused when they should be, you could make sure that that happens. But so let's do back up to our demo now. First, let's refresh and make sure this actually doesn't go away. Hey, it went away. Cool. So if you get that to happen in Polymer, what it means is you have a JavaScript error. Yay. So then, it's not like it broke. It sort of broke, but you can go and see, oh, well, there's a problem somewhere in your element. Easiest thing I find is you go to the demo site, and you'll see unexpected identifier or something like that. Hey, line 90. So I can go to line 90 here, and we can see, hey, I didn't put a comma, and that's what it always is with JavaScript, isn't it? So commas in all those places, put one there because trailing commas are for winners. So now we refresh. All right, cannot read property pause of undefined, 187. We did a lot of work there, 187. This .audio.pause, which means that stop sound got fired off somehow. Calculate stopped. Oh, because the initial state is stop. Yes. And so we can't stop something that hasn't actually existed yet. So that means on our play event, we had this check, right, to verify this existed. So we're going to need that on stop as well, specifically around this running. So let's just make sure that that is in place, now it's not going to make it because you can't stop something that doesn't exist, but if it's not there yet, it's not going to brick. Cannot pause undefined, 188. 188 window.audio.pause. That should be accurate.
Make sure that that actually refreshed before. Yeah, it did. Okay. So console.log window.audio. Let's see what the heck that is. It says undefined. Type of. Oh, there we go. Needed to quote it that way. Okay. So then we'll do that. Down here as well for a literal equals. Okay, good. So, fun with JavaScript. So, okay, cannot read property play of undefined in this case. We have play, it's not working. Stop is also not working. Yay, we broke everything. Okay, but that's because they're calling play sound directly. Now, if we refresh, the first thing we want to fix up is this, right? Cannot read property play of undefined. So, line 201. And I don't entirely understand why that did not get created previously. But, hey, whatever makes you happy. Okay, so now our off events don't work. So it was just blasting in my ear, playing and breaking things. Does not equal, is a literal does not equal. For, oh yeah, look at you. Thank you. Thank you, the feed. Okay, so that actually corrects this. And again, we got to do the play buttons though, right? Because the whole reason I just went and rewrote all this crap and broke things live is so we get these buttons to actually mutate the state correctly without screwing things up like I just did. So basically the dot stop sound and dot play sound don't exist anymore. And that was the whole point. So now instead of calling some random functions that then people can't figure out what's going on, I can actually just set properties. So I could say ex.state equals, and in this case it should be, which that one? That one is a stop button, so stop. Okay, so let's change the IDs of these a little easier, make this more readable, make that a play button, and we'll do a pause button to make sure that that works too. Pause, and then we're gonna go down here. It's no longer gonna be ex, it's gonna be blow up, because that looks cool, and then ex for the place will blow up all over the place, blow up dot state stop, and that's when I not click button 2, but that's going to be when I click stop, and we're going to run around and do play everywhere, button play, and then I'm going to copy this, paste it down there, and we're going to do pause. Away. Okay, and then it's not going to be blow up dot play sound, it's going to be blow up dot state equals pause. And then it's going to be blow up dot state equals play, which now you should be able to see it reflected on the things when we actually go and inspect the DOM, but it's also going to then evaluate the properties down below. And so we can have events bubbling up, which we'll do in a second, but we can effectively have events bubble up the same as if an external entity forced this to do its thing or if it was internal, right? So to the element. So refresh. Cool. Oops, let me update my status messages first. Sound paused, right? Because we want everybody to be able to experience that. And
Yeah, I'm going to type in that. So it's only for that sound effect. That is the issue. What we're trying to iron out with this is down in, where is it? It's going to be, not in calculating stop, it's going to be in the actual stopping of the sound. So if we reset or we're paused, right, then we should send this to 0. So reset will always send it to that. So let's try that again. So it will appear that this.stopped is not being calculated in the way that I am anticipating. Even though state is being set to stop, and then state is going to get updated, and then calculating this is going to change, and then new value, if it equals stop, it's going to set stopped to true, and then when we fire stop sound, it should set the time position to 0. So let's do this instead. So reset sound, right, is like an override. Let's leave that in, and then before stopping the sound, because we have access to the window in this case, if you're clicking stop, which would fire stop, we're going to actually hard set this back to 0 in this case. So what we should get is a broken screen. Yes, that's awesome, because I can't set current time of undefined as per the previous issue, right? So this is actually a really good illustration why you shouldn't mess with globals in this way, right? And requiring things to be there. There we go. All right, so let's try this one more time with the sound effects. Hey, we have success. And so now we not only have an awesome explosion that has sound effects that can be set to different sizes and colors and can have its image and its audio swapped out if you're like a really hardcore developer, but we've also got state management going on. The last part to that is we haven't actually fired, done anything with these events. So you see these events are going up. What I could actually do up above is listen for those. All right, so we do awesome pause event, and instead of doing this, toast like that, right? This could be on our element that's blowing up, right? So let's do in this case blow up dot add event listener. The event we're listening for is that, because we're listening for that to come out of the element. Okay, and then we're going to do like this. I'm going to drop this because it's used all over the place. All right, we only need one in this case. If I made it const, it would probably make one person happier. So we're going to make that const, and we're going to move all these statements out of here so we can document this a little better for when it's our demo. Right, so that's the blow up. These are the buttons. Button. Okay. Buttons here. All right. Now we're going to do the explosion tag. All right. Event handlers for the buttons. Okay, so in this case, it's going to set that, but we're not actually going to do the toasts, and we'll show you why in a minute. So it simplifies this drastically. Now, we're going to have an event listener for pausing specifically. And this is going to be events coming from our tag. And so then I don't need to select our tag. I don't need to mess with the state. But I am going to get a message that bubbles up from there. So let's do I believe it's e.details. And we're going to do a console.log for e.details. And then we're going to put 3 of these. Or actually, let's refactor, right? So let's do awesome event. Okay, so awesome event is going to be our event. We're going to use one event instead of all these silly different ones. Right, so now that's what's going to bubble up, and message is going to be in it. So now I'm going to refactor up above and only have to listen for one event, that awesome event, and then we're going to display a message. So now I'm listening for awesome event, and in here we should be able to set this to e.details.message, I believe, but that might actually break. I'm going to need to inspect the console. I haven't done those events in a bit. Play. All right, hit stop. Cannot read property message of undefined. So let's see what's in ET. Maybe it's just e.detail. Can't remember what the message is. Oh, it is! Yay! So now that's effectively properties down and events bubbling up, right? So I click in a higher level element and it sets the state of a lower level element. And then I am listening in the higher level element for an event that occurs after the fact. So in this case, it's an awesome event, and then I'm just going to have a toast show up with whatever the message was from down below. So you can see if you get your events and your properties done correctly, then whenever, in this case, whenever anyone wants to use your element and build upon it, you can do a lot more sophisticated things with a lot less complexity. Now you can take out those console logs and I can hit play. And you might not hear it, but you can see the message to indicate it played. If I click it again, it won't do it because it didn't change states, right? We're still in a play state, so we don't need to fire play again. Versus pause, now it is in a pause state. So it's like I'm visualizing what that is. And I can inspect this thing. All right, and we can see state is paused. I hit that and see state goes to play. The event bubbled up, which is why I saw that. We can do events and do stopped, right? So it's not, and now this is where you get into how do you want to handle this, right? But so if I mouse over, we do have a hover event and a click event still down in the element, and so you can't hear that, but it is playing our audio file. So now I have a decision to make. Do I want to fire off the same events when someone interacts with it that I would otherwise? So let's go into our element in question and look at our listeners, right? So our listeners down here, right? So for the things bubbling up, it's going to be to play sound or to stop sound. But what if instead we just changed the state, right? So if we change the state, then we can get those events to bubble up in the exact same way with these events and kind of be like handing off these events to go up even more with the correct thing versus right now, technically our data model is out of whack. So like I can click play and it influences state, but technically when I hover this, it should be putting it in the play state, but it's not. So let's rectify that. So let's do, instead of play sound, let's do set play sound. And then let's do set play sound, and we'll do set stop sound, right? And that is effectively the same as our pause evaluation in that case. So, as we're not going to have a connotation of pausing necessarily. It's either going to, if you put on that property, which is going to force it to stop, or it'll automatically force it to be paused. So that'll be pretty cool. So let's do set play sound and set stop sound as our two things. Now these will be pretty easy. So we'll do set play sound function E just for consistency, and then set the state to play.
from an event. Okay. Now all this is going to be is this dot state equals play. That's it. And the rest will take over. So then we do this dot set stop sound, and we're going to say this. You could get a little out of sync with this because of, you know, if you wanted pause or whatever. So let's do pause because I don't really want to do. I don't really want to make like a third state for like toggle. I mean, you could click and toggle between whether it's making the sound or whatever, but I'm not even going to mess with that right now. So in this case, no, sorry, that's not going to be pause. It's going to be this dot state equals pause. Okay, so now whenever set stop sound would fire, so on a mouse out event, it should actually mutate the state internal to itself. Well, when state changes, it's going to notice that state has changed to calculate playing, and it's going to go, oh, well, I'm playing, and it's going to set playing to true, and then it's going to bubble up, or it's going to play our sound, and it's going to fire off the awesome event. So let's see if we get that consistency in our data model now. So now, even if you can't hear it, you know what the state is of that. And so that is correct state management with regards to our elements. So now if I mouse over that, you can see it goes to play and off, it goes to pause, or I can invoke it with a third party and I can send it to pause, or I could stop it and put it into a different state, or I can put it back into play, or I can go into pause. You get the idea. That's why I start talking fast. So effectively, this is done, in my opinion. So this is a working tag that has a pretty decent level of sophistication to it. Let's see what that error is. You know, so we want to clean up any lingering errors that pop up. So you can see, hey, paper styles. In this case, we don't have the paper styles tags in place. So let's do a Bower install save Polymer elements, and let's get those paper style. Whoops, not stop. Paper styles. In this case, it's going to ask which. Okay, save. All right, that error goes away. Cool. Let's make sure there's no other lingering errors or notices. That means I have all my dependencies in place. Now let's do Bower update, just because I do this off of something else. And so we're going to get updated dependencies. It's going to ask some questions. Even though this is a Polymer 1x element, which now is on 1.10, I still use all like 2 elements in it, and that speaks to the hybrid nature, so that you can still do that, right? So I'm using from Polymer project and the Polymer team's elements, I'm using all 2 elements, but they can run in hybrid mode, so then they'll still work all honky-dory. So let's just, to be safe, let's refresh. Cool, it's still there. Our documentation's all in place. Hit demo, and we're still good to go on that. Right? Hit play and pause and stop. And now, you might ask, why didn't I see an event on this one? It's not that an event isn't firing, but on our high level, we're only listening for the first one. So the first tag actually is blow up. So it'll only react to, it's only listening for those events here, but they are going to bubble up the events for everybody else still. So illustrating the globalness. So let's get this, what's our process from here? So one, we got to commit our code, right? So let's do git add -a, git commit m. Awesome element working. Yay! Oh. Okay, git push origin master. That's going to get it up. Okay, nice small MP3 file. All right, now let's do git tag, because there's a requirement for getting it on webcomponents.org. Git push origin 1.1.0. There's no real enforced convention associated with this, but because it's a 1x element, I like to try and keep it in the 1x universe. Now another cool thing you can do, and this comes into play with our tooling. Let's look at what our repo is, but so let's refresh. You can see our code is up there, and yay, 37 seconds ago these went up. But our tooling in the LRN developer repo, if we just go to that real quick, LRN developer, right? It has some directions on how to use it, a bunch of SH scripts that help
just let you make things that can get up to webcomponents.org that much faster. But in our boilerplate, we have this update-demo.sh script that Michael Potter borrowed from somewhere. And so what this does is it's going to commit our demo site to GitHub pages with a single command. So because we have that, you can see update demo, and if I let's look at that really quick, you can see it's the only thing different in it is this right here, where it's basically, well, what repo do you want to push it to, and what's the tag name? So let's do sh update demo.sh. That is now going to clone. It's basically going to check out. You see it switch branches. Then it's going to run Bower install. So it's going to get all the dependencies. It's going to ask whatever questions it has to about resolving things. And then it's going to commit those to that branch and publish them to GitHub pages. There we go. So now we're good. And then it deletes the files to clean up after itself and changes the branch back, which is awesome. Love that function. So what that did is, you can see now we have another branch on here. Or whoops, sorry, that's the wrong repo. You need to go to Awesome Explosion. Now we have a GitHub Pages branch on here. And the way you get to a GitHub Pages page is you go to the name of your repo, .github.io, or sorry, the name of your organization in this case. And then let's try Awesome Explosion. There we go. So now this website is live. I'm actually I'll paste it into the chat. Anybody can click and play around with it and see, actually, well, not see, I guess hear all the audio that I was hearing during this. You can, get a demo of it. Well, now let's take that and let's plug it back into our GitHub repo, because it'll be really useful for other people to be able to see a quick demo, right? Let's do edit. Let's throw that in the website field. Save. Let's add some topics for discoverability, web components, edtech, demo, sample, things like that, right? Because this isn't real. Actually, take out edtech. This isn't real at all. Let's do silly and funny, because this is a pretty funny one. All right, cool. So those are some decent tags on there for discoverability. You'll see it has the boilerplate tag here. Why this is important is when I submit this to webcomponents.org, as I'm going to do in a second, people will be able to see our awesome explosion immediately. So what does that part look like? Well, we need to grab this part of the name. We need organization name / awesome explosion. To get things on webcomponents.org, you go and you hit publish element. You don't need an account or anything. It's pretty amazing. And then it asks you, about checking requirements, right? So you need to make sure you have a tagged release. You have to have a README, and they give you a nice little template, which our tooling, we basically just borrowed from. It has to be open source, a valid open source license. And then it just talks you through what it's going to do. Make sure your inline demos aren't too crazy. All right, so paste that in there, and I am not a robot, at least not today. We're going to publish that. And then what we get, oh, please load. Oh, it didn't load with our dependencies there. I still have to get that part figured out. But you'll see it has all of these over here. Now I could actually look at this and tell you, okay, well, our normal elements require behaviors, and they require materialized CSS styles. This doesn't, right? So let's fix that in our Bower file. In this case, I'll just go in directly. So we don't require materialize. We don't require Eller and sys behaviors. The other thing is we don't actually require these either. These could be moved to dev dependencies. So let's actually take these and throw them down in here as dev dependencies, because they're not real dependencies of this. All right, and then paper styles, because this is a pretty simple tag. It's about as simplistic as you can get. All right, get rid of those. And then just for funsies, let's make this that. Oop, I have a trailing comma there. Okay, save. Let's do a Bower install just to make sure it's valid. Oh, unexpected parse error line 370. Oh, I don't have a comma there. Okay. There are Bower commands to just, engineer this file. I just like doing it this way. It's faster.
Okay, so if you get that, then you know it ran through. Yay. So it has the dependencies that it needs to get going. Cool. Let's get add a, get commit m, simplified, okay, get push origin master. Now this is where a case where we'd want to tag this. And that tag will eventually propagate to webcomponents.org. Get tag that, get push origin 1.0.0.1. Whoops, not a comma. Okay, and then if we wanted to, we could also do sh update demo. As this is just dependencies level, you know, like I'm not terribly concerned about that aspect being reflected. This might, you know, take some time to come through. I don't know what it scrapes through every few minutes, but you can see this is up there now. This imports our awesome explosion tag. I'm not actually sure what other parts you need to have in there. It's claiming it doesn't know where awesome explosion is for whatever reason. Maybe it's not published on the raw CDN, raw get CDN in that case. Maybe it hasn't just propagated there yet, but it should at some point show up here with a legitimate element because it's a real one. Going to JS Fiddle. Let's see. Hey, implement awesome explosion. Let me see if that actually is a. Yeah, it's no, it's just coming up as like iframe code at the moment for whatever reason. Okay, well, oh well on that part. The important thing is that if you're on webcomponents.org, the first thing you're going to see is our awesome explosion we've been working on this whole time, which I can click, and then you can hit the demo, and you see the demo, and you share with your coworkers a bunch of broken images because apparently I didn't put the paths in correctly. I wonder if you do /demo. No, so that's that pathing issue again with the relative media. So let's see in there. Okay, blow up. It's also where setting a base in your tag is probably really important, which in here they are attempting to, if you go to export, and I wonder if you can't set a base and have that help you with resolving where these things are, because the tag, it should be relative to where the tag loads. Not the demo. That's a little weird that it's relative to where this demo is running as opposed to where the assets are. Well, I'm not sure I actually have. No, they're on the demo. Someone just pointed that out as well. So if you use the tag and the files are relative to where the tag is, it should be okay, but I guess it's because it's an asset, because I have this absolute path is probably part of the issue. So, you know, if you're using it in a demo, you might have to point to that directly. Kind of stinks. I'm not really entirely positive what the issue is. The best way to fix that with the paths, but I guess I could fix it in the demo so that they at least register when someone goes to look at it. I mean, it might also help if they were in this document somehow, but whatever. So let's go to demo, go to the file, and then we'll just add those references in. Image equals ... assets, and then it's not that, it's explode, and then sound equals ... assets that. Paste, 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 paste. Okay. All right. Let's see if that works in our demo still. Or if that screws up our demo. Locally. It should work locally, and I believe it'll work globally. Okay. So again, another good example of like, hey, that kind of goofed stuff up or got it up and the demo is wrong. Could be set base URL in index. Yeah, that would probably help. It also is going to be relative to if you compile, you know, if you do a build process, those wouldn't be there. So like we do a build process, so we'd have to account for that somehow. As far as these initial paths, if not set, that is relative to where it is. So it should literally work. But oh well, that's, you know, minor concern. So let's save and push this up. Okay, git add a, git commit m, fixed paths for demo, push origin master, and then let's tag this one again. Git tag 0.0.2, git push origin 0.0.2. Okay, and then sh update demo. There we go. All right, so this should ask probably no questions, or it might ask one or two. Let's see. It's thinking about it. Thinking. There we go. That's really great to see, though. So it asked me those questions because it's doing a Bower install against the dev dependencies. So if you actually got the element, you don't need, you know, paper button and all that stuff, which is now worked out. All right, but these things are in the dev dependencies, so it can show you the demo, and so it did the dev dependencies instead, as well as the normal dependencies. So awesome. So that is that's about it. Unless anybody on the feed has any questions or wants to see anything else related to an awesome explosion. I'm gonna, once this screencast is saved, I'm going to also associate it to the repo so that people can see what it took to build it. But you can see it went from nothing to this is fully up on webcomponents.org, and any of the rest of you should be able to check it out and do stuff with it. And the elapsed time that I'm seeing on my counter is 1 hour and 48 minutes. So this is a pretty stinking transformative workflow. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see. Hey, there we go. Now our demo's good to go. You might have to do a super refresh or whatever. Let me paste the direct link to the demo, because if you load an iframe, it's going to be a cached copy. Cool. So if you have interest in any of our other elements, we are LRN web components on here. This is, you know, we've got 47 that are out there. Our GitHub repo has even more, some of which haven't fully progressed yet. Our latest one working on is LRN sys progress, which is for managing and tracking progression through a series of items. And so you can see you can get to some pretty sophisticated, non-silly examples as well. I've been working on this for a few days now. You can see, hey, there's a thumbs up for finalized state. This one is got some pretty decent accessibility, and like, so this is, you know, with keyboard. It's also caching the reference to whatever this loaded address is. So we still have to mess with it a bit. You know, this is just a prototype at the moment, with a goal of getting it worked into something even larger. That, like, this is, you know, our elements going across, dictating our progress, and maybe as I scroll down the page, that it would actually load the next series of content, or would indicate how far I am through it. I could fly out and see, you know, maybe some other chapters in our course or what have you. So everything we build is geared around improving education through better, you know, components. And if you want to see more about the project these components are actually for, you can go to elmsln.org and dive into why we do nothing but components now, and layer them on top of a Drupal-based architecture. So thanks for tuning in today, and I'm going to clip the stream. We'll see you around.